Welcome to today's episode, the podcast, where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It is Monday, November 24th, Thanksgiving week if you're in America. Today is the day that the Origin of Species, or On the Origin of Species, the Charles Darwin book, came out in 1859 and changed academia forever.
Survival of the fittest, right?
It's considered, well, natural selection, evolution, all that jazz, but it's considered the most influential academic book ever written. And it was just by this English dude 200 years ago.
I mean, he was a biologist, so it wasn't just some English dude.
Yeah, he would just travel on ships and he would collect bugs. That's all he'd do. And then he decided to write a book about it. All Her Fault is also a book.
Yes,
It is not an academic book.
No, it came out in July of 2021 by
much more recently.
Andrea Mara,
and it was a Sunday Times bestseller. What's the difference between a Sunday Times bestseller and a New York Times bestseller?
I actually don't know the difference.
Well, one's released in the UK and one's released in the US.
Yeah, and it's her only bestseller that she's written so far. She has 8 books. I think a 9th one is coming out in January of this next year.
Yeah, you read All Her Fault.
Yep,
and I watched it, but you also watched it so that you could compare the two. And the one thing that struck me is that because this is a British book, did it take place in the UK and then move it to America?
Yes, so it took place in the book in Dublin.
This is a reverse Coben, a reverse Harlan Coben, where all his books take place in America and they take place in the TV series in the UK.
Do you know where it takes place in the TV series?
Chicago.
Yes.
The Bean.
Chicago.
They talk about it. Yes.
Exactly.
And you have the star of Succession. Or one of the stars of Succession. You have one of the stars of the White Lotus, one of the stars of the Bear, and a Fanning.
No, well, not only that, you have those 3 stars with those shows that have defined almost the 20s at least, but also they're playing very similar characters, right? Abby Elliott is still playing the sister. Jake Lacy, he's still playing kind of the
scumbag.
dick. Yeah. And then Sarah Snook is just depressed the whole time, very much like Shiv from Succession, I felt like.
I think Shiv's a bit different. Shiv is much less selfish in this show. However, she does end up committing more of a felony than I think Shiv in Succession ever did, which is crazy by the end of it.
The book follows 4 different characters, primarily Marissa, Jenny, Irene, who is Carrie's mom, and then whenever it goes back in time, most of the time when it goes back in time, it follows Carrie. I felt different about each character. I thought that Marissa, for the first part of the book, because it's split into 3 parts, whenever it focused on her, I really enjoyed it because it was fast moving and the plot was always going at a good pace. Jenny and Carrie, whenever it focused on them, Jenny's kind of the main character for the first part, I would say. I could hit or miss. It was sometimes interesting to read about their perspective and how their lives were going. And then Irene, who was Carrie's mom, I hated her story the entire time. It didn't tie back into the ending at all. And it just ended very abruptly, kind of like Jenny's story does in the book as well. But the show decides to go a different path and just kind of focuses entirely on Marissa.
Yes.
However,
it simplifies things.
Yes, I also
But it keeps all the characters.
Yes, it does. And I was glad that they decided to cut down Irene's storyline. She's still in the show, the character, but she is in it way less, which I think was already a smart decision that they decided.
It reminds me a bit of when I read Expats. It also had 3 points of view, also women-centric, also dealt with a kidnapped kid, which did not go as well in that story with how Milo ends up turning up in episode 5 or 6 here. But
I think it was episode 6.
Yeah, and Expats, it's a completely different ending. But I was sort of used to that. This also reminded me of Bad Sisters because of the bad husbands. And then it also reminded me of High and Low, because that is a movie. When did that take place?
I think you're talking about the black and white Japanese film, right?
The new one starring Denzel Washington was called Too High, Too Low, or something like that.
Yeah, and it came out on Apple this year, I think.
Or The Highest and the Lowest, or something. They did a spin on it, but that also deals with a kidnapping. It also felt a little bit like The Accused, that FX series from a while back. It felt like it could have been an extended episode of one of those. Especially,
I think it was Fox, wasn't it, or something? Yeah,
Fox, FX, and it felt like Michael Peña's character there really kind of embraced that type of, show mentality.
So Michael Peña's character, it's interesting because he's given a lot more screen time here. They also gender swapped his character from the book because I believe he's supposed to be playing Officer McConville. In the book, it's a woman, but yeah, they decided to make him Detective Alcaraz here.
Yeah.
And they gave him a kid that is
autistic, I think.
Autistic, yeah, exactly.
So All Her Fault is sort of tongue-in-cheek in the title because if this show is anything, it's a bit sexist in that all the women characters are redeemed and
Yeah.
all the men characters, sides maybe a couple, are trash cans. Like they are the worst of the worst. So it's very easy to draw that gender line and be like, okay, so I can even go down them for you.
Yeah.
Leah, you said that's the sister, right?
Yep.
She is a recovered drug addict and she didn't hurt her brother's spine. That was like the big reveal halfway through the thing because the whole time she'd been blamed for hurting her brother
For
when
decades.
they were kids.
Decades, yes.
And she's redeemed. Jenny is shown to be a good mom. She didn't mess up with the hiring of Carrie because for a while it seemed like maybe she was responsible for the kidnapping. Doesn't have anything to do with it. She's great at her job. We see that on multiple fronts. She is the victim of her husband's lies, and she isn't faking her friendship with Marissa. That's also called into question by her husband, who, again, is a trash bag.
And she's not afraid to leave him by the end of the series. It was interesting to see that change from the book because it does end almost as abruptly as it does in the TV series. But in the book, Jenny and her husband decide that they're going to stay together and just kind of try to work things out. It ends on a positive or more positive note than the TV series does.
That is interesting. They did decide to kind of scrap all the husband characters and kill one of the boyfriends. You know, Marissa, she's shown to be a good mom. She is the victim of her husband's lies, is a victim of the media and their lies, is a victim of basically everything Peter's ever done. You know, Peter's just, he's going about harming everyone and then calling them like crazy for even questioning him. Sarah is a busybody. She is the closest you could get by saying that there was a woman who was kind of a villain. But if you really think about it, she's judgmental, yes, but she takes care of the kids whenever anybody asks her to. She only she pesters the parents about volunteering for the school. That's not really a bad thing to do. And she's proud of Jenny when Jenny stands up for herself. Even though she gets yelled at by Jenny, she's even like, good for you.
It was very odd because you could tell that the show was kind of trying to paint her to be like a bad character or an evil character, but I never really got that sense.
I think it was just to show like you can be kind of a busybody and still be a good person.
Is Carrie who you were going to go to next?
Anna Garcia, the nanny.
Oh, okay, yes.
So everybody turned to the nanny and was like, did she have anything to do with Milo's abduction? And then turns out she didn't. And there was no reason why she shouldn't make friends with the other nannies.
Yes.
You know? So like that was her redemption, is that everybody turned on her and was like, you must have had something to do with it. And she was like, no, I was just trying to be friends with this lady.
That's very much the first, like I say, 3 episodes of the TV series, very much like the book. Maybe some things were dramatized a little more, but like that's just like almost straight from the page.
And then the ultimate one that you were saying, Carrie/Josephine, she did kidnap Milo. She did go on the lam. She did make some questionable choices that we'll get into, but Milo is her son. She never killed anyone, and none of this would have happened if not for Peter. Peter in the accident, Peter stealing the baby, Peter and her death. Like everything that Carrie, that you would want to put blame on her for, you really can't because of the existence of Peter.
I have so much to say about Jake Lacy and Peter and his character, but I will say that in the book, though Peter is sometimes a suspect, it was such a great twist for like the last fourth, where it's just this section where after Marissa figures out from her son that Peter actually was the one that kidnapped him, and then it's just revelation on top of revelation. It's like, okay, he was the one to kidnap Milo, but he was doing it for this purpose. Wait a minute, he didn't just kidnap Milo, he also like knew Carrie. Wait a minute, he also knew Rob and Colin and is responsible for all their deaths, and that's what it.
And he was all responsible for his brother's injury when he was a kid.
Yeah, and I mean that the brother's injury was actually just something that they made up for the TV series.
Okay.
It actually wasn't. I think his brother is in the book, but he's able-bodied, so that was just something that I think they did for dramatic effect. But I'm just saying that for the ending of that book, it was such a twist.
You needed extra reason to hate him so that when the main character decides to kill him, it's justified.
Well, my question is that Jake Lacy, I think that he's a good actor. I was a little worried, though, because when I saw that he was going to be playing Peter, I was worried that you were going to figure out because he's only been playing bad characters with a friend of the family and the White Lotus that it was him from the start.
So if we're I want to get to the guys and how they like made them into bad characters. But first, I will say that my two things going into the show was I thought it was just going to be a Jenny and Marissa storyline because those are the two on the cover that I see first.
For a majority of the first part of the book, it is
Marissa and Jenny, and I just thought that they would have like a frenemy relationship where maybe one of them was responsible for the kidnapping and that the lies between them, that it would just focus on those two characters. Instead, Jenny is hardly in this show compared to the other side characters.
Yeah,
she really doesn't come along to become that main character. In fact, with Dakota Fanning, it really does deserve the width because it is kind of just like a thrown-in character.
She's barely in there, and they give so much more time to also Leah. Like, they decided to almost put Jenny to the sidelines.
Right, so that was what I thought seeing the poster. And then when I started seeing the people trickle in, yes, because of a friend in the family, and because I'm aware that he's a bad guy in The White Lotus. I haven't actually seen that season.
I think it was the first season, yeah.
I instantly was suspicious of this guy. In fact, I was so suspicious that I was unwilling, even when given, like, the first episode tries to give him a little bit of a break, but they shouldn't have laid any foundation for anybody to be suspicious of him, and they did. They had him flip out at his wife, and they started trickling that, like, little stuff too early because everybody knows this guy. This guy is so typecast. He's the Sean Bean of I'm going to kill this character in the first season, but like he's just going to be evil.
Again,
so I could not take him seriously.
I think he's a great actor. It's just that when it comes to that, the hints that they were giving were too big and almost way more in the TV series than in the book where Peter, it's like, okay, yeah, there's a couple things here and there, but really it's the ending when you learn everything.
So let's talk about the other tinier characters. Richie is a bad husband, Jenny's husband. He slacks off on his duties. He lies to Jenny about where he's going and why he can't hang out with their kid.
Yeah.
He accuses her of not being friends with Marissa. The only thing he didn't do, which I was like, well, maybe he's part of maybe he had an affair with Carrie. And it was like, and that ended up not being the case at all. So, but he is an asshole for that reason. You have Colin, who for some reason is Marissa's best friend. It's never sold to me in the show. We watch 8 episodes of him being in every family discussion, him part of the Milo investigation. He even did the canvassing, like he arranged that, but I never really buy that him and Marissa are all that close.
Yeah,
they don't show them, but they are in business together. And for some reason, Marissa has decided to go into business, financial business, with a gambling addict, which confounds me. Like I remember in college, I was taking like OChem or something like that. And there was a lady who came in there to talk to about biochemistry and what she was doing in the field and stuff. And in the middle of the lecture she was giving, she got a ping on her phone and she looked at her phone and then she looked back at the class and she just went into a whole tangent about how you should never get in business with your family. And I took that as note. I was like, okay, well, that's clear. But to go into business with your friend who happens to have problems with money in a money field, and then finding out that, yes, later on that he is stealing from the company, he is as bad. It was so on the nose, I felt. And he also is part of the reason why Milo is then kidnapped, because if not for him and his debt, then the bookie would never have stopped by and seen Milo.
There's a lot to there. I agree with you. I'll start off with what I agree with because one, he was like part of these family like discussions or these arguments that were happening.
Very personal.
And he was always there, and it was very strange. He's a lot more in the TV series. I never really got why he was there for that. However, when it comes to the gambling thing, when it comes to him skimming off the top and working with Marissa, that is from the book.
I don't care. It's just, why would you do that? Why would you go into business with a gambling addict?
Yeah, I think that like it was more natural in the story, at least when I was reading it, but I understand your complaints with this character. I thought here everything that made him kind of a cool character in the book was just kind of like he was just randomly here.
And then Josephine's dad, who is sort of presented, he's the bookie. He's sort of presented as a good dude at first, like he does care about his daughter. He just doesn't want to put her up and like let her stay with him or anything because he's divorced with the mom. It's a complicated relationship. He kills her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And he also ends up blackmailing the Irvings and taking what he doesn't realize is her actual son away from her, but he knows that she thinks it's her son. So just he's an awful parent.
They changed a lot of things because Rob Murphy, I think, is who you're talking about, and in the book,
Yeah, because it's Josephine Murphy. It's her
right,
dad.
right. So at kind of the very end of it, this is when Peter is talking to Marissa about his whole plan. He was kind of blackmailing Colin to go to the hotel. And then actually Rob Murphy and Colin. Well, actually, what happens is Rob Murphy then shoots Colin because Colin had an amount of money,
Yeah,
like a
so they
bag of
flip it
money.
all around.
Yeah, and then Peter kills Rob Murphy, kind of like how you saw in the finale. But
In
yeah,
the show, he connects with Peter directly, and he says, "I have your son. You just need to bring the money here." Peter brings the money there. He kills the dad, and then he goes back home. And then Colin ends up dying just by a loose gunshot when Carrie shows up to kind of confront Peter on being a bad guy. So like, yeah, it's changed. Then Peter himself, he's Mr. Gaslight. He is a murderer. He is a sociopath. He is a control freak and ultimately at fault for everything. So it's not all her fault unless you want to say it's the fault of the women for having bad taste in men. Like that is the only good guys in this series are Detective Alcaraz, Kyle, and Brian. Brian has the disability, but he does have like his full tangent meltdown
Yeah.
halfway through, which is kind of strange. Kyle also went to jail for a while, and Detective Alcaraz is burdened by having to take care of his son, but that's where he learns his compassion. And that's why he's such a good detective, is because he even uses things that he's gained along the way of taking his kid to class, like the drawings and stuff, to diagnose Milo as having like synesthesia or whatever.
So did you like episode 4 because that's when it focuses mostly on his character?
I think episode 4 and episode 7, was that Carrie's episode?
Yeah, that's where it explains
those are the
story.
two most important episodes of the series, and I think they do a decent job. Those are the closest to Accused.
I like the first 3 because, again, they were closest to the book. Afterwards, though, it goes in so many different directions I just did not like.
Okay, so despite the beginning of the series, so the series starts with kind of like the slap, a very foundational moment where Marissa arrives to pick up her son Milo from a play date, and she finds out that he's been kidnapped. The person that she's sent to, or the house that she ends up showing up to, the person's very helpful, helps her contact Jenny, who that's supposed to be the mom in charge. And Jenny's like, I've never heard about this. Then they find out Carrie, her nanny, is the one who set it all up. And from there, the next few episodes are the first one's just missing kids. Second one's about them going public. The media turning on the parents and being like, what if this is all a setup? I heard that her company is in trouble and they're having an audit. And so there's a lot of just random drama.
They took what Jenny was seeing on the internet in the later part of the book and decided to, I guess, take that out and then put in the second episode with the media, and it didn't flow as well.
It didn't flow as well because when someone comes out with their lawyers and everything, and they throw a conference and it's like, please come home, Milo, like, that type of spiel. You don't get the first question from the media being like, did you guys set this up? That would be a troll on the internet for sure. And that's what you said was in the book, right?
Yes. Yeah. She was reading these comments that people were like, oh, this was all a conspiracy. They wanted the kid to go missing and just all this stuff.
Right. Yeah. But besides the second episode, it then just like goes to the periphery. Like we never hear about that again. The third episode is about canvassing people. Like everybody goes around. They don't get any leads. The fourth episode where Alcaraz, you said the detective, he's going around and he's actually getting some clues. So this is actually a good episode. And I would say part of the show where if you don't mind the meandering plots, you can kind of be doing other things and still understand everything that's going on.
I did not like this episode. I didn't like all the characterization they were giving Alcaraz. It felt like it was slow moving. And it didn't even really deal with like Marissa or Jenny or any of the main characters.
I just like Michael Peña as an actor. I think he did a better job than the rest of them because the rest of them weren't given as good a lines to deal with. And then episode 5, you got the Mr. Chips storyline. That's the kid's stuffed doll. And you find out more about how Carrie must have been stalking this kid for a very long time. And then Milo shows up. He just shows up in the back of a car. At the end of the episode, they find out that a kid has shown up. And in episode 6, you find out that Milo's back.
But can we go back to episode 5?
Sure.
Because I kind of want to rage about this a little bit. why? Did they decide to do this? They basically gave away that Peter was the evil villain
How'd they do
in
that?
episode 5, because
Remind me.
episode 5 is where they were talking about how Kyle ended up getting his injury and how Peter was the one to actually do it
Oh.
when he was 10 years old.
So you wanted them to do all the twists at once?
No,
Can you imagine, like, he's in the middle of
First off,
murdering Carrie, and then they're like,
no.
you're the one who messed up my back.
Well, no. The thing is that like that was all fabricated. Like I said,
Yes.
it wasn't from the book at all. And I thought that episode 8 was going to be the twist on top of twist on top of twist. But by making Jake Lacy evil, it was almost like All Her Fault knew that Jake Lacy knew that he was going to be the villain. Like, you were supposed to almost put that together, because they just ended up making him like the most dick person at the end of it.
Well, it's funny because in the first couple episodes, you just have Marissa's character absolutely hating her husband.
Yes.
Like, she cannot stand to be around him. She even says as much. She's like, I'm tired of you hovering. I'm tired of you just constantly trying to be there for me. It doesn't feel like you're being authentic, like that type of thing. And she's right. But at the same time, it's like, I don't like either of those characters for the very longest time because I don't trust Peter. But Marissa doesn't really lend herself to me feeling bad for her because I still haven't even understood Carrie's storyline. They hint at in the early episodes that Carrie is like dressing up, she's hiding Milo, and you have to wait till episode 7 before you finally they don't give you like breadcrumbs throughout. They legitimately just make up the fact, or they tell you the facts straight out, which is fun. But maybe in episode 4, the series could have been half as long and they could have told just as entertaining a story.
My thing was that like I thought Marissa's character, like Sarah Snook, did a fine job, but my problem was just with episode 5 where it's like, why give away that Peter is a dick? It's like, okay, so we have this evil villain who's been very villainous. He not only put his brother accidentally, sure, but still put his brother, like, had made him crippled. But then he's decided to blame his sister. And then by the time the twist comes in episode 8, it's like, oh, we already knew he was a villain. They basically gave it away.
I guess I disagree with you just because I feel like they gave it away from the very start. He was continually gaslighting every single episode. Had they waited to tell the story about the spine, I agree with you that it didn't need to be there at all. But if they were going to do it, they had to do it earlier than the finale. And it just, there was no obfuscation for this. They shouldn't have cast him if they were going to write it this way. Had they 100% kept it that he was just a great guy until episode 8, then it would have maybe played okay.
And that's why I'm saying they should have done.
Yeah, they still would have needed to then not give away Carrie's storyline. And that's where I find a real problem, because had they told you Carrie's storyline in episode 4 or 3, the whole thing would be much more compelling. Like, they wasted so much time with the side plots and the arguing and the whose fault is it, and nothing really gets done except for the Alcarez episode, the Carrie episode, once Milo's already been returned, and then all the bodies start stacking up. I wanted
to talk very, very fast because I know that you brought up how you see Carrie in the second episode. You never see her in the present storyline. Whenever in the book, it's always in the past. So that was something different, where it's like when she's doing her scheme, when she's doing her actual kidnapping, like all those scenes, that was not in the book.
Yeah, but does that mean that you figure out like why she's doing it though?
Yeah, like episode 7 was almost an accumulation of all the things in the past.
Right, because it ends where episode 6 ends, because all of it is just a big giant backflash. But that's what I'm saying. You get little bits of information throughout, and you're led to believe that like she thinks that Milo is her kid, right? From the past backflashes in the book. But you don't get that until the very end of episode 7. And if you knew that, then you would know that it was because of Peter. And what I'm saying is, if they tried to do those little backflash things, like if they tried to keep it like the book and save the ending with Peter till the very end, they still would have given it away with Carrie's backflashes. The reason they saved those until the very end is because they wanted the big reveal being that this Milo is her kid. She kidnapped her own kid, 6 years later, 5 to 6 years later, he turns 6.
He's 5, I think, in the series.
Right. And so, and part of the reason she's able to diagnose that is not only did when she got in the car crash with these people when she was coming back from the hospital, but like when she finally sees Milo, she has the same synesthesia that he does, where she attributes like different words with different colors and stuff
taste,
like that.
yeah.
And that's apparently so rare that like she didn't need to do a DNA test. This is my problem with not doing a DNA test though. She went through a huge amount of work to like she was highly depressed and then she turns her entire life around and then takes on a new identity to go work as a nanny close by to Milo, and then after months of being a nanny then steal him away with her boyfriend and try to get out of town. I understand the short-term strategy of not just going to the police and saying, I think that's my son. A, she would have sounded crazy. B, had she gone ahead and become a nanny and taken the DNA swab of his mouth and then waited for the results, like
Yeah.
that, and then tried to go through the court system, A, she doesn't have nearly as much money as the other people. They would have tried to bury it, they would have gone after her.
Yeah.
And so she thought, this is the quicker fashion. But I still think she should have done it. And here's why. Had she had those results at her disposal, can you imagine, had she shown them to her dad? Her dad would not have then, because he's a trash bag, we already established, but he would not have, I believe, tried to sell off his actual grandson.
Yeah.
That's different. Like then if he thought his daughter was crazy, he was just putting up with her bullshit.
It would have been irrefutable proof.
Yes. And so if he hadn't turned her in, but she'd still gotten caught, because I would believe that she would still get caught eventually, especially with the way that Marissa's character was so hell-bent on finding her kid.
Yeah.
And even Peter. And when that happened, can you imagine when the police bust down the door and she shoves the DNA results into their face and says, this is actually my kid? Obviously, they would take Milo away, but they wouldn't return him to Peter and Marissa. They would wait until like things sorted themselves out, and it would go to a court and the truth would come out, because there'd be no way that she would just randomly have lost her baby.
But do you think
and
that
it
she
would have
would've-
been exposed that Peter, because they would have interviewed the same guy that Alcaraz interviewed.
Yeah.
The guy who said, I remember the guy with the baby, that Peter actually took the baby from her car. That would have been known. And then at that point, she would be alive, and everybody would at least have the knowledge that Peter is this douchebag. He would have gone to jail. Everything would have been sorted had she just done the DNA test. There was no reason she shouldn't have.
In the book, she doesn't even really try to do the DNA test either. So
And it's like going through this whole process. I get where she's coming from. She wanted to simplify things. And in her ideal world, if she did make it away with Milo in a false identity and convince him that she is his mom, then the world is golden. But she should have just had this as a back burner, like option 2, because it serves as a way better idea than what she ends up doing, which is taking her dad's gun, going directly to their house, and then threatening them all at gunpoint just to tell them that Peter's a bad guy.
all that stuff does not happen. In the book, her plan is that she's actually going to give Milo a haircut, because he's 4 in the book. That was a change that they made. They aged him up in the TV
1 year?
series. Yeah.
1 whole year.
But also that they were going to act like he was a girl, and then her and her dad, and Peter goes out of his way to say there's no incestuous stuff that was happening between them in the book, but they were just kind of gonna live out their lives and like kind of travel, and then a couple years later, when Milo kind of became older, he was just going to be their kid. Yeah. So.
Whoa, that's just, it's so convoluted when you could just prove that it is your kid. It actually is your kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is an issue with me. That is probably the biggest issue of the show. The other thing is, once everything's uncovered, Carrie dies because of Peter, and for some reason Marissa decides she's not going to tell the police about it. She has a recording.
Okay, yes.
She has a recording that literally has him admitting to stealing the baby, sort of, and also killing Josephine's dad. And instead of just delivering it, they go through extra effort on the show to try to prove to you why she should be afraid for her life, and that's why she can't tell anybody about it. But I'm not buying it.
So the ending of the book is that Carrie, Peter smothered Carrie. It wasn't a gunshot, and Carrie doesn't come to their house. He smothered Carrie, and she died. Like, I think definitely like a couple days earlier. Right. But what happened was that Marissa, after hearing this whole story about what Peter did and how he kind of caused all these people to die, goes to the police record and is calling the police. And Peter is telling her not to say anything. And then as she's on the call with the police, she actually goes to bat for Peter. And that's supposed to be the end of the book. There was what I thought would have been a perfect...
she saves Peter's bacon by the end?
Yes.
So Jake Lacy is a worse Peter than then oh, okay.
By the last chapter is like a news report about how 6 months later Peter ended up dying from a fish allergy. That's what it is in the
So as
book.
opposed to a soy allergy,
Yes, and it's supposed to be kind of played for laughs, but the fake ending is almost Peter and Marissa kind of just both, yeah, like basically them being okay and her saving Peter by the end.
interesting. Well, I still think that she should have just given up the information she knew at that point. I also think it was kind of a scummy way to kill off Carrie after everything that we learned about it. It's like, I understand Colin. He was kind of dead weight anyway, honestly. No, but like with Carrie's character, it did kind of feel like selfish that we had to wait that long. And Sophia Lillis, right? She did a really good job. I think she was my second favorite after Michael Peña. And it just felt like her death was so unnecessary. And more importantly, like if it had ended like expats, it's funny because you would have had the three women kind of all bonding together and then like over a baby.
Yeah.
And it kind of would have been the same thing. Jenny and Marissa do end up at the end like single moms just hanging out with their wine and with the kid. Just imagine Carrie's next to them, like
At
all
the
of them.
pool.
Yeah. She could be like half a nanny and half like that's my actual son. The bigger question is like the way that she kills off, because we do see her kill off Peter by making out with him after she just ate some soy.
Yeah, because it's a soy sauce allergy as opposed to fish.
I credit the team for like trying to be creative. It was kind of predictable because they kept on stressing how allergic he was in every scene, but also anaphylaxis, which is what he goes into. And what she did is she replaced his EpiPen with something that had expired, and the police took a while to get there in the middle of this party so that it wouldn't look as suspicious and everybody be like, oh, you tried to save him. And her husband would also know that she killed him because she literally like whispers in his ear, like, I was in charge of your EpiPen and stuff. And that's kind of your allergy. I was supposed to take care of this, right?
She's very smug about it.
But there's no set rule as to how long someone's severe reaction can last and whether or not he would have died in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours. And had they saved him, this would be a whole nother story. She hinged everything on the fact that she thought that his allergy would kill him right then and there. And she got lucky that it did. But like, that's where it's like, this is fanciful television because like there's a good 50% chance that he would have survived till the ambulance got there. And then you're dealing with the same situation, only worse, because now he has dirt on you. Like you may have had dirt on him, but now he has dirt on you. You tried to kill me. And so now they both go to prison and Milo's left as an orphan. So I just didn't see how that was a very smart move at the end.
And after Peter dies, there's like a huge section. I say there's still like 30 minutes of the show left, right? And I felt like that was just unneeded.
Surprisingly, though, in that 30 minutes, they still didn't answer most of the lingering questions. Like, how does Leah respond now that her boyfriend is dead? How, like, we see her give testimony and kind of clear, not Carrie's name, but Marissa's name. But we don't see anything about her, like, dramatic. Her boyfriend just died.
It's funny. They only dated and it was like years. It was decades past. In the book, they dated like once. They went on one date, but in the show, they decided to make them together.
We never find out about the spinal procedure, whether or not that guy gets it done. We don't find out there's no resolution as to what Colin's shenanigans added up to. Is her company bankrupt? Like, how is she going to survive? Was Peter rich enough where she can just live off that money for the rest of her life? We don't get really anything with Jenny besides the fact that we know that she got divorced. We do find out that her deal with the book went pretty well.
Yeah, that was a weird storyline that they kept going back to.
For Alcarez, they introduced that plot where he suspended his moral values so that he could get his son into a better school. And then he, at the end, figures out that Marissa killed her husband and why she killed him. But like, I don't know if is that closure? Did that feel like closer to you?
Not really. But anything with Michael Peña's character, it just seemed like there were a lot of open-ended questions. Like even the stuff with his son, even though he got into the school, it didn't really feel like there was any type of, like final thing there. It was just kind of like they could have had 2 more episodes and I felt like his story would still be the same.
He did his job. He let a murderer go. They stacked all the deaths at the very end. It was like 5 deaths in a row. You had Colin, you had Josephine's dad, you had Carrie/Josephine, you had Peter. You had Peter's original baby, and I am still missing one though, but it doesn't matter. All her fault. 4 out of 10 from me. It attempts to be adolescence, and it is not. And so my favorite line, though, I will say, is Alcarez when he says, because we didn't even talk about this too much, but like the person that Kyle sent Marissa to at the very beginning, she was like, oh, he was flaunting in my face like who he was, because we find out that
Yes.
was actually his foster mom. And Alcaraz had a completely different take. He was like, he knew this was going to be the worst day of your life. And he sent you to the place, to the person who made him feel the best or gave him the best life at your moment of you knowing that you were going to need someone like that, knowing that you were going to need the nicest person to deal with your trauma. And so that was a cool little bit. I thought that was a clever line in there. But yeah.
I would probably also give it 4 out of 10. I know that Andrea Mara, the actual author, she helped with the writing of it. She also came up with this idea when she went to pick up her kid from a play date and the house was empty. And what really happened was a neighbor just came out and realized that she had moved, and then she went to the right location because the paper that the school gave her wasn't updated yet. But overall, the series has gotten, first off, did great with streaming. Like, it's the top streaming show of anything. Like, even Death by Lightning, which is number 2 in streaming, which is a Netflix
more of a
show.
docuseries, yeah.
Triple that. It has like 33.6 million views watched in its first week. So huge success for Peacock. They were hinting there might be a season 2, but ever since they've kind of asked the creators and they've been like, no, we're kind of done. Slim to none chance on that. But it has a 77% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, a 7.6 on IMDb, and a 75% audience score. So I find it funny because it just incrementally goes down by 1. And then it really depends on what you're looking at, because like The Guardian gave the series 5 out of 5 and said you come from the terrifying premise and stay for the absolute pleasure. But then
it's very Bad Sisters in the way that like the bad husbands are dealt with a similar vibe. Like, you've just got these people who eventually are so fed up with their significant others that they kind of turn on them,
Yeah. And I mean, also IndieWire gave it a mixed review, gave the series a C and said it's kind of fun, but runs out of steam. And the delayed answers stress themselves silly to emphasize a point made. I think I probably mostly agree with that. And then Time said pace is a problem from the beginning. The season feels disjointed.
It's so crazy.
Off.
We get so many shows that are like 5 episodes nowadays, like really, really short shows. This should have been one of them.
Yeah.
Why did they make it so long?
I find it funny because the Death by Lightning, our thing was that it was too short.
Yeah.
This was too long. And I think it could have probably been 6 episodes, and I agree with you. It probably would have been better.
Yes.
So.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.